Welcome back to Virtualize Everything. Today we're going to be looking at the process that's needed to be done to install Ubuntu 24.04 LTS version on Proxmox. Now, if you're here and you're looking for an installation video that's not done on Proxmox, you can go ahead and skip to the steps after we create the VM and start it. The installation will be the same as if you were doing it on bare metal at that point. Let's jump into this tutorial and look at the first steps needed for downloading your version of 24.4 LTS. This is the most up-to-date LTS version of Ubuntu. LTS stands for long-term support. This version just released about a week ago as of filming of this video. So the first thing we're going to need to do to download our 24.04 LTS version is to browse to the ubuntu.com website, and then you're going to be greeted with this screen here as of today. This screen's telling us about the new release of 24.04 that we're going to be working with. But there's really no good way of downloading it or nothing that's clear. We're going to have to go up here to Products, and then we're going to select Ubuntu Desktop, not Ubuntu Server. We will do a separate video on installing Ubuntu Server that'll be coming out very soon. So if you're here and you're looking for that, go ahead and check my library. I will have one for you as well. So then we'll select Ubuntu Desktop, and then we're going to go download Ubuntu Desktop. Here at Download Ubuntu Desktop, we're presented with a bunch of information. We're going to select Download 24.04 LTS right here. And here at this screen, we'll start an automatic download. We're actually going to go ahead and close this automatic download because we want to bring our image in Proxmox. So to bring our image into Proxmox, we're going to go hover our mouse over Download Now. We're going to right click on it and copy link address. Now, since I'm here on a Mac, my terminology might be a little bit different, but there is terminology that's very similar inside of the right-click menu on Windows. Now, heading over to our Proxmox web interface, I've pre-selected a drive for ISO images, so where you can go ahead and download this. The next step here, after you select the drive and select ISO images, is going to be to click download from URL and paste that copied link address in here where it says URL. Then we'll hit query URL, which will bring us up the file name that Ubuntu, or Canonical rather, decided to give this file. Now that we've pasted in our file name by pressing query URL, we can go ahead and start the download of this file. Let's go ahead and do that by clicking download. And now this window appears. This will be the automated download feature. This will be the automated download feature for Ubuntu, or rather Proxmox. And when it finishes, I'll return to you to show you the next steps of getting Ubuntu Desktop set up here on Proxmox. Now that we have our ISO down, it's time to go ahead and start the process of creating our VM. This will allow us to run our ISO, install Ubuntu, and actually generally play around with it. So to do this, we're going to head over to our Proxmox web interface. If you haven't already done so, head up to the upper right-hand corner and click Create VM. After clicking Create VM, we're going to be presented with a bunch of general options. The node that we want this to run on, and if you don't have Proxmox set up in a cluster, the default node is going to be just fine for you, and you shouldn't have any other options. The VM ID, which can be customized if you like. Proxmox by default creates these in sequential order. And then the name. The name can be whatever you desire. We're going to call ours 24-04 today, but again, you can call yours whatever you wish. Now, resource pools. We don't have any resource pools created, but if you did, you could configure one here. That's a topic for a different video, and we won't be covering that today. Just know that not having one set up will be just fine for you for basically most of what you're doing. Now we can hit next, and we can select where our ISO is stored. We downloaded our ISO to the ISO storage drive. This may not be true for your system. If your system is set up in default state, it'll be housed in local. Now in the next drop down of ISO image, we'll go ahead and select our ISO that we downloaded, Ubuntu 24.04 desktop. We'll leave the Linux operating system the same as Ubuntu is Linux. Hitting next, we can check QEMU guest agent. QEMU guest agent will allow Proxmox to communicate more smoothly with the operating system once it's installed. Graphics card, machine, BIOS, and SCSI controllers can all be left as default. Hitting next, we're going to be asked to configure the size of our hard drive. I'm going to give my system 100 gigs here, but this is entirely up to you. Also, if you have an SSD, you want to go ahead and check discard at this point. Discard will help with trim and other features to extend the life of your SSD. Now, pressing next, we're asked to configure our CPU type. I'm going to give mine 4 cores. I believe Ubuntu requires 2, so anything more than 2 will be appropriate. I've also had it stressed to me, which I've yet to verify, that even numbers of cores are more likely to have better performance than odd numbers. If you gave it 3 cores, you'd have less performance than if we gave it 2. Now we're going to select a CPU type of host here, but the default x86-64 v2 ASA is fine for this installation, and if you were in a cluster scenario, may be desirable if you were changing between different CPU types on different nodes. Host, I find on my particular CPU, gives us a little bit better performance. It also allows us to pass through features like virtualization if we were going to virtualize Proxmox for a demo or something like that. Pressing next, we're asked to configure the amount of memory. I'm going to go ahead and enter 10,000 here. I believe the bare minimum memory here for Ubuntu is 4 gigs at this point. That is unconfirmed. I'm operating from memory here, but 10,000 will give us somewhere just shy of 10 gigs. And that'll be plenty for our configuration. Pressing next is going to be asked to do network configuration. And at this point, if you have any custom bridges, you want to go ahead and configure. Also, if your network has custom VLANs, this is where you could enter VLANs. I have none of this for this particular system, and Ubuntu will run fine with the VirIO drivers, so we're leaving all of this default with firewall checked. Pressing next, we're now asked to confirm all of these settings, and then we can hit finish. Hitting finish tells Proxmox to go ahead and create the VM, which is what it's doing right now. By double-clicking on this line right here, we can see the status report and that it is now finished, so our VM has been made. Right here is 115. This is the VM we just set up, and there's no custom configuration at this point for this install that needs to be done on any of this sidebar. If you were looking to add hardware like USB dongles, you could do it here under hardware by clicking add. Cloud init configuration could be done here if you had that option. Requires the hardware adding of a cloud init drive. Option, we can also configure things like boot orders and stuff that would normally be configured in a bare metal BIOS configuration window. So now that we've gone through this, we can go ahead and press start, and we can open our console. We can open our console by clicking on console here on this sidebar, or by coming up here and pressing console. If you press console in the upper right hand corner, it creates a separate window like I'm showing here. I've gone ahead and chose the custom window feature, which is going to allow me to give you the largest viewing area of what we're doing here. We'll go ahead and choose to use American English today, as that is my native language, and we'll hit next. We don't need to customize any accessibility options, as I'm not hearing impaired, seeing impaired, or anything else. This is no target at anybody that is. If you are, here's the point where you can actually go ahead and configure those options. Let's go ahead and press next. We'll choose American English again for our keyboard layout and press next. Now, Proxmox doesn't have Wi-Fi capability unless you plug in a USB dongle, so we're going to choose to use wired connection, and we will press next. We're going to install Ubuntu, so we'll leave that dot checked as by default and press next. If we chose to try Ubuntu, Ubuntu will boot off of basically what is a live CD mode, and use its ISO to demonstrate Ubuntu for you. We're going to choose the interactive installer as we don't have the configuration file set up for the automated installation feature. Pressing next. Ubuntu gives us the ability to add in third-party drivers if we had unsupported Wi-Fi drivers or graphics drivers or something. This is the point we could do that. We can also download and install support for additional media files by default. Since we won't be using this for any of that type of thing, we can go ahead and not check that. If you are using MP3s, MP4s, MOV files, and such, it might be a good idea to check that particular box. Pressing next asks us to start the installation where we're actually going to configure the drive and whatnot that we want to use. We're going to erase the entire disk as this is a disk that's set up solely for Ubuntu, and then we'll format it and do the installation. So since we're doing that, we're going to erase the disk and install Ubuntu. Pressing next, we're asked to give it our username, and if we were to use Active Directory, we could check this box and configure it at this time. We now have everything filled out, so we'll press next, select our time zone, press next, and Ubuntu gives us a nice little handy readout of what is going on. We'll hit install, and the installation of Ubuntu starts. I'll be back with you when the next screens come up to show you the further steps for getting Ubuntu installed here on Proxmox. At this point, Ubuntu asks us to restart. Its installation is finished, so let's go ahead and do so. And then we can start exploring this, look at how to do some updates, and a few basic things. To do the restart, we'll go ahead and press restart here, and I'll be back with you when this process finishes. Here at this window, Ubuntu wants us to press enter and verify that the installation media has been removed. Here in Proxmox, we don't have to worry about doing this step. It will be done automatically for us here at the reboot, so we can go ahead and press enter. Now we're presented with a login screen asking us to log in. We can log in with the username and password that was set up during the installation. And we're presented with a fresh desktop here from Ubuntu with our network installation all set up. We're going to be welcomed in, and we can go ahead and press next here at this point. We don't want to use Ubuntu Pro as that requires a subscription. Or rather, it appears it's going to be free for up to 5 machines. I still don't want to use it here at this point, so we're going to skip from now, and we're going to press next. We don't want to help improve Ubuntu, at least I don't. You can, it's going to send telemetry data back to Canonical. I don't like that type of thing, so I will be select no. Now I'm going to hit next. And it asks us if we want to install some other applications. We could go ahead and check out the Application Center. I won't be installing anything today, but it's kind of nice to look at. Overall, this new version of Ubuntu has a pretty nice feel. So there's quite a good support, as we would expect for Ubuntu, for open source Linux applications. Let's go ahead and close this out. We'll press finish. And now we want to go ahead and check out our applications menu, find a terminal, and let's see if we have any updates. From the old 9-dotted insignia for the applications menu has been replaced with an Ubuntu logo, but it's still in the same spot. Let's go ahead and click on this, and we find terminal. Here at the terminal screen, we can go ahead and start the update process, or at least to see if we have any updates by entering sudo apt update and our system password that was set up during installation. You can see that everything is up to date, but if we wanted to do any updates, which we don't have any available, we could enter sudo apt upgrade and then add a -y. Pressing enter would install any updates if we did have them. Now jumping back to our Proxmox web interface, and pressing summary, we also notice that we don't have a guest agent running here. So let's go ahead and install that, see if we can get that up and running, and then we'll finalize the video at that point. This step is not required if you're on bare metal. It is meant to allow a layer of communication between the Proxmox system and the VM. Back at our console window, we'll press the down key and remove that command, and we're going to use sudo apt install, and we're going to install a package called QEMU guest agent. And again, adding the -y to the end. Now that that's installed, we're going to go ahead and shut down this VM. Shutting down the VM fully and then bringing it up will activate the use of guest agent with Proxmox and the VM. To do so, we're going to click on the power icon and the power icon again, and we'll choose power off and click power off. Now here we're given a screen at the console to power on. If you weren't at the console, you can go ahead and also press start in this upper corner. Now with Ubuntu fully up and running, if we look at our Proxmox web console, you notice that we have an IP output, and this tells us that QEMU guest agent is successfully up and running and able to communicate with our Proxmox server. With that, we'll conclude this video of installing Ubuntu desktop on Proxmox. I hope you enjoyed this video presentation and it got you up and running with your own installation of Ubuntu 24.04. As always, have a good night.